Good evening and welcome to the November 15th Coeur d'Alene City Council meeting. The clerk will note that all council are present, and our invocation tonight will be led by Jason Nye with CDA IDE. Jason, welcome.
The pledge or the
Invocation.
invocation first. All right, sorry. Everybody stood. I thought it was a
They
pledge
say
of allegiance.
pledge.
Well, everybody stood up, so I thought it was a pledge of allegiance.
We stand for prayer.
All right. Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this opportunity to gather as leadership and citizens of the great city of Coeur d'Alene. We're thankful for diversity of thought, for minds that can plan and can foresee what our community needs. We ask that thou will bless us and guide us with thy direction, with thy intentions for how we can further bless our community. And these things we pray for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Jason. Dan English, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to announcements from the council. Announcements, Kiki.
I have two things. I was at the Joint Government North Idaho Building Contractors Association meeting today, and the Coeur d'Alene School District presented some information on their upcoming levies this spring. It was really well received and very informational. Also, Post Falls presented drafts of their proposed updated impact fees, and I was once again reminded of what a great deal it is to build in the city of Coeur d'Alene, and so our impact fee review conversation, I'd sure like to get some feedback from staff at some point as to when that may be coming to us this next year, as I think it's important to review that. All other jurisdictions are. And then last Thursday, we had a workshop with the Regional Housing and Growth Issues Partnership. There was nearly 60 folks who attended. Each of the cities in the county, except for Hauser Lake and Spirit Lake, had representatives and staff there, as well as the county. There were legal counsel, our urban renewal agency representatives. It was very well received. The exit surveys had 100% of the participants saying that they were going to bring the information back positively to the rest of their commissioners. And the planning and zoning commissioners that attended had great dialogue on what we need to do as a region in preserving housing for our local workers, with 100% saying they wanted to do it again sooner than 1 year, and rating it very good or excellent as far as the content and the goal of that. So we'll be working on round 2 of that.
Thank you. Christy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things. Last night was our Park and Rec Commission meeting, and there were such great presentations on what our staff's been doing and grants we've received. So I've asked them to come forward to the full council so you can watch some of those presentations. The other thing is I'd like to thank our streets department. They got out today and they tried to do some of the leaf pickup. It won't be the same that we've seen in the past with the big ballet presentation, but they're picking up where they can, and I think it's mostly on the north end right now where it's not as frozen and some of the pine needles and leaves are on the ground. So that's going on. The other thing, Mr. Mayor, I would like to request that council be involved and have a conversation about the recent closing of the Lake District and the funds that came from that. I'd like to see council giving input back to staff on priorities and spending and what we think we should be doing with that, rather than having it come to us, in a package where we have to say yes or no. I'd love to see us have some discussion. And it's not that we don't value the expertise of staff, we do. I used to work for the city, we value our employees. But this is clearly a priority and spending issue that I think should start with council. And one more thing along those lines. I really think it would be helpful and time for council to sit in on the executive team meetings as one council person, rotating, and that council, we've heard before that maybe staff feels a little bit uncomfortable to have council there or intimidated, and I will just say that that's not a highly effective team that we want to be if anybody feels intimidated by us. I'm not intimidating, you might be, right? Are you?
I try.
Okay. But we're likable most of the time. And so I want us to have that discussion. It doesn't take emotion, it just takes direction from council and the mayor to our city administrator that we start participating in the team discussions. And that's it, thank you.
Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree,
Oh, great.
of course. I think that'd be a good idea. I mentioned that about a year ago. I received an email this past week from an architect, Dale, here in town, and he wrote that, and I know you all got a copy of it. I see your names here. He said he's intensely disappointed and heartsick to see planning and permit approval for the Main Street decimating high-rise, this time right at Sherman and 3rd Avenue, or 3rd Street, for the simple greed of a few developers and their uber-wealthy tenants. I am afraid the legacy of this jurisdiction will be the disintegration of the unique Coeur d'Alene Main Street character, as it has existed and evolved for over 100 years, all irreparably undone in a short period of rapid and thoughtless growth. I've got to agree. I want to see the character of this town preserved. I think especially preserving the character of Sherman Avenue is extremely important to this city. If we see it go, then this is just going to be another whatever. I mean, the charm of Coeur d'Alene, I know that when we first drove through this city back in 1991, we were extremely we adored it. We thought it was wonderful. And I don't want to see that missing. And it's being chipped away. This council has the ability to do something about it. So, Mr. Mayor, I would like to, once again, this is the 3rd time I've tried this, I would like to put an item on the agenda for the next meeting to discuss the potential of height and parking restrictions in the downtown overlay district. That's a motion. I would like to see a second and then a roll call vote if it is accepted. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Okay. You've heard the motion. There's discussion on the motion. Yes.
Yes. I'm going back into the 90s on planning and zoning and back into the 80s before downtown was bustling, it was dying. I remember us going through the high rise. There were some people that wanted to build something more than 3 stories. And at the time, it was the right thing. I think I look back on it and it was the right thing to do. We did a lot of studying on vistas and views and things like that. So there was a big, long plan for many years. A comp plan covered it, and all through the early 2000s, it slowly evolved. I mean, these things didn't happen overnight by any means. There was a lot of compromise. There was give and take, as I recall. To just pull the plug out of it, I don't know if that's going to work. I get what you're saying. I don't think Sherman is going to be impacted as much. Mullen was always pictured, people want to live there because they can look over the park and see the lake. It's always been that. We always pictured some kind of maybe you could call it a wall, which the only thing I think would happen on Sherman is probably the shade thing, right? Which we deal with on East Sherman. You know, if you put a high rise or a building that's more than 6 or 7 stories on the south side, the north side's going to get shade. Same thing with people living on alleys with commercial on one side, and all of a sudden their garden doesn't get shade, doesn't get sun anymore. That happened on the 11th and Sherman, the dentist's office in that old house there, and P&Z stood behind them and said, you know, this is how far up you can go, and to try and give them people something. So it's kind of an issue that's been around for a long time, but it's also about the development of people wanting to live downtown. And since the houses are kind of full, you got to go up. And those are sort of the compromises to it. Not saying that it's hard to look back and realize where we've been to get where we are to where, oh, we don't want to do this anymore. But people still want to come here, still want to live here. When the hotel was built, that was a big stretch. That was going up as high as it's ever been here. And now we've built back up on Lakeside, condos, apartments, hotels, things like that. I don't know if it's something that can be just stopped. I think there's room for some compromise. I think the parking thing has some validity to it. You know, we thought McEwen would be doing a lot. Some of these bigger buildings have parking underneath. But that's part of what the vibe is downtown, is people walking. They got to park down by the park and walk around. At least that's the way I remembered it. We used to have meters. Those went away to kind of create that, being able to park for 2 hours and then move on or get a ticket. So I kind of understand what you're saying. I guess I have too much history looking back on trying to evolve this into something that's sustainable, because in the 80s and 90s, this was a tough battle for sustainability and all the things we want this city to become. Part of it became this because of those, the walking trails and the Centennial Trail. That all came at kind of a trade-off for some of these extremities, you know? So I'm understanding what you're saying. There's some history there that I think we need to take into consideration.
So I'm hearing that you do want to discuss it.
What's that? Yeah,
Okay.
I'm good with it.
At this point, we're not going to get into the actual discussion of those issues. The only point before the council right now is, do you want to have an opportunity to discuss this later? So, yes.
Mayor, I'll just make one note. I'm happy to have the discussion. I think it's wise of us to do so, but I'd like staff to have the time to prepare for this discussion and bring us some information of the history of the downtown core, some of the overlay changes. I know we did work in my early days with Mark Henshaw when I was on P&Z years ago that relates directly to this. So I just want to make sure that staff has time to provide us information needed.
Was your motion to do this at the next meeting?
Yeah, because I just wanted a discussion to see if we were willing to direct staff. We can't direct staff tonight because this is not a decision, it's not an action item, but I just wanted to see if there was, I agree with Amy that, yeah, we should get that information, but only if I think the majority of the council wants to move forward with any action. We can have a discussion to determine whether council is willing to do that, and then direct staff to come back with more information.
Well, if you want to withdraw your motion, you really don't need it. I'm happy to direct staff to bring forward further information and on a future agenda, both issues. We need to talk, those issues are somewhat connected, but also that parking issue goes broader than the height restriction issue.
I'd still like to see what council thinks. Obviously, if a majority of people don't want to have that discussion, then we don't need to spend the time doing that.
Well, let's just vote. All those in favor of further discussion on height restrictions and parking, respond with aye.
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 Opposed with nay?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. We will do that, and I will work with Troy in terms of a timeline.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you to Dale, who wrote the email.
Also, I would like to recognize, and I see our chiefs here tonight, the Coeur d'Alene Police Department. We received a letter today from the Idaho Chiefs of Police Association recognizing our Coeur d'Alene Police Department for reaccreditation. And accreditation is a big issue lately in another venue down the road a bit. But accreditation is a way of setting a minimum standard of operation. And I think it's important that we seek these accreditations to show that we are meeting a certain level of service, that we have set a certain standard for how we operate. So congratulations, Chief, to you and your department on reaccreditation.
Clap for that. Yay.
And now we have the appointments of Kate Walker and Alyssa Mormarak to the Arts Commission and Grayson Story as student rep alt to the Pet Bike Committee.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Clerk, oh no, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for approval of the consent calendar as presented, including Resolution 22054.
Second.
A motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, will the clerk take the roll, please?
Gookin,
Oh, yeah.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers.
Yes.
Thank you. You see, we have a few people signed up for public comment. First one is Suzanne Knudsen.
Good evening. My name is Suzanne Knudsen, and I live at 4208 West Appaloosa Road in Coeur d'Alene. On October 11th, I attended the Coeur d'Alene Planning and Zoning Commission meeting with approximately 25 of my neighbors. We spent 4 hours listening to Kootenai Land Company and city planning commissioners talk about a huge project that will affect thousands of residents who live off of Atlas Road in many neighborhoods. It was unanimously recommended to annex over 400 acres of this 5,000 home development and rezone it from county agricultural buffer land to R8 and R17 as well as C17. I realize it's not on the agenda tonight, but I'd like to bring it to your attention because I think it was a hasty decision by the Planning Commission, and it's probably going to come up to you in the next several weeks. The development could potentially house 20% of the current population of Coeur d'Alene and is extremely high density. It's an enormous development project to take on with the first ever development agreement process here in Coeur d'Alene. There were many unknowns, and there were several issues that commissioners brought up that may or may not be resolved in this first ever development agreement. One thing stood out to most of my neighbors in Indian Meadows after it was proposed that the rural streets in our R1 neighborhood be made connectors to this extremely high-density development. We kept asking ourselves, has anyone actually ever been to our neighborhood? Have any of you ever been to Indian Meadows?
Of course.
I invite you to drive north on Atlas, hang a left on Appaloosa, and drive down and experience that. I feel like I'm in the mountains experience that you get when you drive around Indian Meadows. But be careful because you might see a moose. They're on alert right now, and they're looking for chicken food, and they found it in our yard. But Indian Meadows was built in the late 60s to 80s and was annexed into Coeur d'Alene in the early 80s. We have 1 acre lots that are surrounded by R3 lots and that were built as an equestrian community. One of my neighbors has 7 miniature horses. Another neighbor is often out in the road teaching her grandchildren how to drive a horse cart. One neighbor has goats. Several other neighbors have horses. Many of us take our kitchen scraps to the goats when our compost piles freeze in the wintertime. We have chickens, we have raccoons, who get our chickens sometimes, and we do have moose. We have quail, we have lots of other things, but we have no sidewalks, and we are a wonderful community of caring neighbors who look out for each other. And we're concerned that such a high-density development will wreak havoc in our community and that making our quiet country roads connectors to such a high-density area will be unsafe and very detrimental. Please take 30 minutes out of your day and come visit Indian Meadows again. Let me know if you're coming, and I'll make you a cup of tea, and I'll show you around. But you got to put your yak tracks on your shoes because it's pretty icy over there, because we have a lot of shade, because we have a lot of trees. It's a wonderful place to live, and we're just asking for your help in protecting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Madeline Knudsen? Welcome.
Thank you. My first city council meeting, so
Thanks for letting me speak. I just wanted to say I'm Suzanne's daughter, and I also live at 4208 West Appaloosa Road. I wanted to let you know that I'm also concerned about this development and the idea of using our neighborhood streets as connectors to the development. It's going to connect us straight through to Hutter, and as we all know, when construction work is going on, we do cut through neighborhoods to get around it. So I'm guilty of that, and I've seen that affect some of my friends' neighborhoods. So traffic is a concern, and I just wanted to come tonight and describe to you a bit about what I love about my neighborhood and my neighbors. And I love the wildlife and the biodiversity of the neighborhood. We have so many trees. They're beautiful. We have breeding pairs of great horned owls and red-tailed hawks that hunt in the big field that's going to be turned into housing. And we understand that communities do need to grow, but I do believe in planning well for the growth. And I would love it if some time was taken to study the impact that this will have on our neighborhood. As my mother mentioned, we do have a lot of neighbors who have horses and who are able to ride their horses in the neighborhood because of the lack of traffic. And because we have no sidewalks, we're able to walk around and enjoy the neighborhood without them as things are at the moment, but with all of the traffic that would be cutting through our neighborhoods with this development. If things go as planned or proposed, then it's going to have a negative impact on our community. I love that when my friends come over, they say they feel like they're in the woods because the trees are beautiful and it's set apart from the hustle and bustle of downtown Coeur d'Alene. And we'd like to keep it that way. I just want to also encourage you to come for a visit and check things out and appreciate what we have. We would like to preserve beautiful things that we do have in Coeur d'Alene, and do that at the same time as we plan to put in things that other people who will move here can enjoy as well. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Catherine Hall.
Hello, Council. I'm Mayor Hammond. My name is Kate Hall, and I live at 3801 North Buckskin Road. I'm also here tonight to also ask to please take into consideration all those neighborhoods off of Atlas. I live in Indian Meadows as well. My husband and I, we picked that neighborhood for our family for a reason. It's quiet. We can walk. We can teach our daughter how to ride a bike. We can show our son, we have a 5-month-old son, we can show him the goats down the street. And I'm just very worried about the amount of traffic that the development will bring. So if we could look at revamping it and having all the ins and outs of that development off of the Hutter side where it won't impact a currently established neighborhood like ours, we really do want to preserve the quietness and the lack of traffic. If we have those roads as through roads, Appaloosa, Arrowhead, Nez Perce, all those, it would be a huge impact. I would not feel safe walking my kids around the neighborhood. You know, I love seeing people ride their horse in front of my house. A nice lady stopped by the other day, got off her horse, let my daughter have a ride up and down the street. We would lose that. It would be just hugely detrimental. I'm very worried about the amount of traffic and the impact it would have on my family, my neighbors, stuff like that. If we could keep those roads as dead-end roads, we would really appreciate that, because the amount of traffic and the lack of then being able to walk safely in the neighborhood is a huge concern to me, to my neighbors, as you've heard. So if we could maybe talk about this and have it come up and maybe do some revamping of that how to get in and out of that development, we would really appreciate that. So we're here, we're going to continue to be here, and we really appreciate that you guys have taken the time to listen to us. So thank you very much.
Thank you. In the past, other folks talking to the council have invited us to view their neighborhoods. My wife loves to go to garage sales, so I don't think there is a neighborhood in this community that I don't see over every summer and fall as we go to all these garage sales. It's a good way to get to know your town. Resolution 20-055, a report by Renata McLeod. I should say your full name, sorry.
That's all right. All right. I am here tonight to request authorization to enter into an agreement with Granicus for host compliance services. And I presented this to the subcommittee a couple weeks ago, and I was still in the process of negotiating with Granicus. So you'll note that instead of the $51,785 amount, we are now looking at spending $38,093.87. So we were able to negotiate a deal for the 3 modules, so they gave us a discount for bundling. And we delayed the monitoring compliance services to March. So that was some of the reasoning behind the price reduction. So as you know, when I presented to the subcommittee, the services that we're looking for from Granicus are the property identification module, which will give us all of the identification of short-term rentals in our city that aren't currently licensed, and the property owner's name and address so that we can make contact at some point in time. It will also give us the 24/7 hotline. So right now, our code sets that the neighbors will get the responsible entity's name and number, so that if they have a complaint on the property next door, that would be one of their first calls unless it was a 911 emergency call. So we're not getting the statistics on those type of complaints. So if we have the 24/7 hotline from Granicus, we'll be able to provide that number and do the outreach to the community that that's the number they can go through for non-emergency issues, and we can start keeping the statistics on some of the issues that might be surrounding some of the short-term rentals. But again, we'll be working through with staff on how that workflow will be. So, but that is one of the modules we're entering into. And then the third module will be that compliance monitoring. So as we finalize our code development, they'll be our partner in monitoring those 70-plus sites that are doing the advertising, and look to assist us in any of the codes that we put into the books. If it's occupancy or whatever it is, they will help us along the way. And we currently have 453 permitted short-term rentals in Coeur d'Alene. Dividing that by our cost with Granicus will be an increase of $84.09 per permit. So that'll bring the first year permit price to $369.09 and the renewal price up to $180.09. Now, this is just to recoup our cost from the Granicus contract, and we'll be bringing forward a fee resolution as required by Idaho Code to increase that fee on December 6th. So that'll be a public hearing at that time with some other fees that we're looking at increasing at the city. So that as we go forward with development, just know that if there are other services that we decide to implement, inspections or other staffing costs, we'll have to look at increasing that fee again. But this is our current costs plus the addition of the Granicus costs, so it's just at one point in time that this is what we know to be our costs for March right now. And I stand for questions.
Yes, a couple of things. The anticipation, I would think, of all of this is, we certainly believe that we have a lot of them out there that aren't under our radar, this and that, and if we get to that permit figure by some simple math and things, if we have a whole lot more identified that gets permits, rather than talking about increasing, shouldn't there be a potential to decrease that fee?
Well, right now, it's unknown, because if the code that we are working toward limits the number of short-term rentals that can come in and be permitted, then that would be a different conversation. So
potential back and forth. And then
potentially.
the other thing is, did we, I forget exactly the process, but we've had some, some questions. How did we get to them? Did we look at some others? Do they have any experience in Idaho?
Yes, we looked at several other host compliance services. There's about 4 main ones out there right now. Some of the larger entities are buying up some of the smaller ones. So there's really only about 4 large ones out there right now. We reviewed 3 specifically, and 2 of those 3 weren't ready to give us a price quote. One wasn't willing to split up the modules, so it was all or nothing. But in the 2 that we did a kind of a dog and pony show, we were able to see what their dashboard looked like, what their software looked like. Granicus really was the best one for staff. It integrated well with our ArcView GIS mapping services. The 24/7 hotline seemed super easy to manage and work with. And we just had such great customer service with them through this whole thing. So staff really was sold on Granicus.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Renata, this service is going to offer a hotline
Yes.
for complaints.
Yes.
But one of the things we've been hearing is that there haven't been a lot of complaints to our police department. But we actually are unaware of how many complaints there have been because none of this really rises to a level of where it's reported to the police. So there could be a lot more out there. This will help us get those complaints?
Yes, it should. I mean, it's going to be the participation of the neighborhood, right? We have to really encourage them to utilize the line. Some people have given us stories. I think Councilman Miller's received a few that, they're irritated because the short-term rental person is out there having a little bonfire. Maybe they're sitting out there talking till 2 a.m. It's not really to the level to call the police. It's not loud disturbances. It's just a much intense use, and they have to get up and go to work the next morning. So they're irritated about it, but not enough to call somebody. So we really just have to encourage them to say, hey, if there's quiet hours after 10 p.m., you need to call the hotline. They'll call the responsible party and let the renter know it's time to shut it down. And maybe we get the statistics, but get the actual issue resolved as well, so it's not happening till 2 o'clock in the morning. And it's just that partnership of really giving us the person for somebody to call that they're comfortable calling, and we'll get the stats. Yeah, and some of it's parking. They're parking the wrong way on the street. They don't want to disturb the police, but it's irritating to them. We'll get that stat. It may not rise to the level of violations. If that helps.
Chrissy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Renata, at the General Services meeting, I think there was a little bit of confusion in the public because Dan and Amy and I did sign off to advance this to the full council for consideration. What we heard at the workshop with our citizens and with fellow council was, why are you doing anything without data? And I agree. And so that's the whole idea behind hiring this company, is to gather the data that we need and figure out, do we have a compliance problem or not? And so I think that's a responsible thing to do, and so I'm on board with that. The other thing I would like to inform the citizens is that the mayor did form a committee, and it's council members Gookin, Evans, and Miller that are going to be serving on the short-term rental committee. So,
And Dan.
yeah, I said Gookin, right?
I'm
So,
Dan Gookin.
yeah, yeah. And so this is going to be an ongoing conversation for quite some time. And so it might be a year before we even visit this again and determine if we need to do anything and what that will be. But one of the things I asked at the General Services meeting, and you had highlighted that you spoke to the police department, or at least you had sent a message. I'm still not clear on exactly what their input was. What will their role be? I mean, they're not responding to this hotline all night long.
Right.
Because that would be a huge burden.
Right.
I'm assuming. So what is their role in this?
So currently, the police department's role is to uphold city ordinances, right? So they still and already have the role and responsibility to deal with the parking complaints, the loud party complaints, if there's domestic violence issue complaints, those things are already on the table and happening. So when we talk about this hotline, we talk about the workflow process. So we'll be meeting with Granicus. We met the other day, law enforcement and code enforcement were around the table with us talking about, what does this mean for them? And I think having healthy neighborhoods and communication with neighbors is still really important to PD as well. But the hotline really is intended as we go through the workflow, and we'll meet with code enforcement and police to say, where do you want us to send the calls about garbage? Where do you want us to send the calls about the parking? And how much turnaround time should we expect on that? Obviously, if there's an ongoing party, loud, people drunk and disorderly, that's going to be something they're going to want to go directly to them. So we're working through what's called the workflow, and they'll be a partner with us as we sit down with Granicus and come up with that workflow. But it should be no more than what they're already on the hook to do with city codes and ordinances. It's just going to be determined who they want that call to go to. Is it the main line? Is it 911? Is it code enforcement? And we'll work with them on that. And they know that. We just met the other day.
And the other thing, just for the record, I'm still very interested in a citizens commission, and the idea behind that is not so that we have just form another committee to have a government meeting. I think that people involved with short-term rentals on both sides of the discussion could really be helpful in helping owners and visitors to the city understand what the rules are. And they would be great ambassadors in that way. So I'm really still interested in a citizens commission. That's it.
Seeing no further discussion, there is a motion before you.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I would move that we approve Resolution 22055, which is approving an agreement with Granicus for host compliance services.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion, Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to say one more thing, is we get a lot of feedback and email. Why are the STR owners who are in compliant going to be paying for those who aren't? And it's a very common question, and it's actually one of the things government does, is we all have to pay more taxes for those people who don't, or who don't comply. The county, last time I checked, had a budget called the Indigent Services Budget that was about $1 million a year. So we pay that in our property taxes and state taxes to pay for people who can't pay for health care, or, if a homeless guy dies and he has no family, the government buries him. And we all pay for that. And that's the price we pay to live in a civilized society, is occasionally those of us who can shoulder the burden for those who can't. It may seem like it's unfair, but that's the way the system works. Thank you.
Well, I would add to that, though, before the vote, that on top of that, if we do this right, we will only have licensed STRs, and they will all be paying for it. Yeah. So, in fairness to the rest of the taxpayers, the cost of managing this business is being paid for by the people that cause the need to manage that business. Will the clerk take the roll, please?
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin.
Yep.
Thank you.
And next, we have Chelsea Nesbitt, our CDBG specialist, to talk about a couple of grants from our CDBG Community Development Block Grant Funds.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So tonight I'm here to go over our 2022 CDBG funding recommendations. And our decision point tonight is, should City Council authorize staff to proceed with agreements using 2022 CDBG funds to fund Tesh and St. Vincent de Paul of North Idaho for their projects supporting public facilities improvements. So the city receives an annual allocation from HUD, and community opportunity grant proposals for projects that benefit low to moderate income Coeur d'Alene residents are accepted each year. Based on our 2022 annual action plan, $192,367 was budgeted for the community opportunity grants, and a maximum of 15% of our total allocation can be used to fund public service projects. So we advertised the request for proposals and a notice of funding availability on August 9th and August 23rd. We held an educational workshop in person and via Zoom on August 25th, and then our grant cycle was open from August 9th to September 23rd. We had a meeting with our ad hoc grant review team on October 25th to review and rate the applications. And this year, our team was a little small. John Ingalls was out of town and not able to participate, and we had one person not join this year, and we didn't find a replacement. But we had Councilmember McEvers, Pamela Bates, who is a volunteer senior service coordinator, and Lindsay Allen, who is the president of the Coeur d'Alene Association of Realtors. Projects were prioritized based on community needs and the applications received. So our projects have to line up with our consolidated plan goals, and we have 6 of them. The first 2 are to increase the supply of affordable for sale and for rent housing to the city's low-income residents. And then we have goal 3 is our improvement of our city sidewalks to improve accessibility. And goal 4 is to continue with our neighborhood revitalization efforts to improve the condition of housing in low-income areas. Goal 5 is to expand higher-paying employment opportunities for residents of Coeur d'Alene through economic development. And then goal 6 is to offer public service program assistance to organizations that support moderate and low-income residents. So 2022's total allocation is $349,112. $69,822 is allocated for administrative expenses, and that's capped at 20% of the total. Our sidewalks, we have $5,000 going into a sidewalk fund, and it's kind of building up, and we have some projects that we're trying to identify for the spring. And then our MRAP, which is our Emergency Minor Home Repair Program, we increased the amount this year to $71,923 from it's normally $50,000. So that left us with the $192,367 for community opportunity grants. So the maximum public service amount, again, can be 15% of the annual allocation, and we have an existing public service grant of $10,000 to Lake City Center for their Meals on Wheels program that comes out of that public service amount. So this year we had 3 applications for public service projects, CD Aid, United Way of North Idaho, and Children's Village. But we have had some delays, partly due to COVID and some other issues, in spending down the funds from previous years. So we're at a risk of exceeding the public service allowable spending in 2022. So there's the allocation and then there's the spending cap. And so we're kind of recommending not funding any public service this year because we need to stay in compliance with that cap. So Tesh requested $71,792 for the replacement of lighting in their buildings and adding lighting for safety in their parking lot. Their lighting is original to the building, which is about 30 years old, and there's no lighting in the parking lot right now. And then St. Vincent de Paul requested $128,423, and this is in addition to last year's request for their restroom rehab project that we granted them $60,000, but they found that there's asbestos in the building and that needs to be dealt with. So the abatement process increased the cost of the project and increase in construction prices and that kind of thing. So they would like to add the abatement in and then also expand the project to include renovating the conference room. which also has some asbestos issues too, so they can combine the abatement into one project, one big project, instead of doing two separate ones, and then get both things done at the same time. And that conference room is used by a lot of different organizations who also do work for the LMI community. So other funding requests that we received were Lake City Academy for an ADA ramp, but they are a private school and they are not in a census area that serves LMI, and they don't have enough students that would qualify either, so they kind of don't qualify. The Faith Walk Community Fitness Park is in a census tract that would qualify, and it's open to everyone, and they do have some plans for disability accessibility. So it's a good project, but it wasn't prioritized over the housing stuff and the food and other projects. And then Orchard Ridge, they asked for $192,358 for construction planning of their new facility, which is market rate apartments. So that doesn't qualify directly. It's not even though it kind of, the revenues can support the rental assistance units, it's not a direct benefit. And then NIC requested $50,000 for their Veterans and Military Family Support Project. And again, it's not a direct benefit. It doesn't create jobs, and it doesn't, their idea was to have the scholarship so that it would open up money for housing and food and transportation, but it's not a direct payment that qualifies through HUD. So these are the two that we are left with that qualify, and the committee recommended funding TESH in the amount of $63,944 and St. Vincent de Paul in the amount of $128,423. And TESH has assured us they can finish the project with their own funds to make up the difference in the amount. And so these two projects actually fall under the benefit to low and moderate income clientele, and authorizing these grant awards will allow TESH and St. Vincent de Paul to move forward with their projects supporting public facilities improvements. And I have Marcy Hartzell here from TESH, and she would like to come up and just give an overview of what TESH does and a little bit more about the project. She has some photos, if that's okay. Nice to meet you in person. I'm going to get you to the right spot here. Thank you. Okay, you got this.
Thank you for having me. I think most of you probably know about TESH. I know a few of you have been to our events or even to our facility. So first, I just want to say thank you. You have funded TESH projects in the past. And yes, we continue to ask for funding from the CDBG grant. We've been around for 46 years. Serving Kootenai County. We serve about 400 individuals. Let me just advance this. In the area, our mission is to provide opportunities and services to people with disabilities of all ages. We serve ages 4 through 84. We have about 400 individuals a year that are served at the TESH building. I have about 50 employees. We serve people with intellectual disabilities, that's the main category, and within that could be anything from Down syndrome to a physical disability. Our purpose is to transform lives, expand choices, and enrich our community. We did fit into, I think, the goal that she talked about, serving with low-income individuals. 98% of the adults that we serve fall in the low-income category because of the aid that they receive. So you're hitting the mark there. But I think also one of the other goals that wasn't mentioned in our grant application was serving people, helping them with work services. a large portion of what we do at TESH is providing employment services to adults and teenagers in this community. And I think that's, again, hits a portion of your requirements. I have a 24,000 square foot building on 2.8 acres. We have 14 vehicles and 3 passenger vans. Every day, about 100 cars go through our parking lot. Cost to serve, it's about $5,600 a year is our annual reimbursement that we receive from the state and government entities. But it actually costs about $6,800 to serve individuals. So there's about a $1,200 gap per year. So I fundraise and I ask for grant money and I beat feet to support the clients. So there's 3 main goals within our project: replacing the current fluorescent lighting with all new LED fixtures, install lighting controls in classrooms and break rooms such as touchless features, dimmers, motion detection sensors, and timers, and to install lighting in 3 different outdoor parking lot areas and entrance areas on campus. The current indoor fluorescent lighting system is outdated and inefficient. I would say probably this is an estimate, but about 80% of our clients suffer from some sort of neural deficiency. When you're in a building for 6+ hours a day with flickering and humming fluorescent lights, we are absolutely doing a disservice to the clients that we serve on a daily basis, not to mention the staff who also suffer. You know, maybe it just be from a concussion like myself and are triggered by lighting, but more than anything, it's about serving our clients the best ability. We have we have 3 parking lot areas. A few years ago, we had some vandalism. We installed some camera systems and some lighting at the doors. But I was telling Chelsea a story. This past summer, we had some vandalism to our cars, and we were trying to figure out what happened. So we thought, oh, no problem. We'll go to our cameras, look at the camera system. We've got these great cameras that take pictures of our parking lots. But we realized at midnight, it's dark. Can't see a dang thing. So, not to mention the need for lighting for vandalism, which it actually only turned out to be rodents eating the wires, which was good. But the safety of those 100+ vehicles that are coming through our parking lots and the staff that we serve that come in and out. 3:30 in the afternoon, in the evening, it's dark. And we're just bustling cars in and out, hoping that nothing happens, and we need to make that change for the safety of our clients. Not to mention, all of these upgrades will help in cost revenue for our building. It's an aging building. Updating those lights, we think will save us about $200 to $400 a month in lighting fees. That's huge for an organization like mine that I can put back into the facility. These are just some pictures of the indoor lighting. You can see some of them have, some lights are working, some are not, some we've replaced, some we've tried to upgrade. Some canisters we can't actually get anymore to fit the lighting systems, so they are a hazard with themselves. This one on the far right flickers constantly. You can't see it in the picture, but that is in our activity center. Our activity center serves 20 to 30 individuals with some of the highest needs, and this is a place that should be safe, a safe place for them to be for 6 hours a day. Next picture is our outdoor area, and you can see the top pictures are during the kind of 2 o'clock in the afternoon time frame, just about a week ago, and then in the evening. And we have lights on the building, but no parking lot structures with light poles on them. So the light is very focused, and then it shuts off, and we want to change that. This building, Shuan sits right behind us. We share a cul-de-sac right off of Industrial Way. They, too, have security cameras. We will partner with them to put 2 of those lights on their building to help with the whole cul-de-sac our building and Shuan. There's quite a bit of traffic that runs behind now on the trail, and we are seeing increased foot traffic and pedestrians walking back and forth through our facility and our grounds, and that will help both of us. So this is just a picture of the roundabout where staff and clients come through on a morning and afternoon basis, and that's what we want to completely light up. I have one more story. There's a moose wandering around in Atlas area, and it likes our facility. Beds down right in the front area next to this big tree in that first picture. And the other night I was working late and I hear a noise, but I look out my window and I can't see anything. And sure enough, it is the mom and the calf standing right outside. So, but I can't see that until I walk out into the parking lot. So having lights would be much safer for all of us. But I just want to say thank you. The city and through CBDG, you've been very supportive of Tesh in the past, and we hope that partnership continues moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, we also have Larry Riley here from St. Vincent de Paul, who would also like to just do an overview of the services and the conference room usage, and then a few photos of their project as well. A little bit of an overview there.
Marcy, you did such a great job. I'd like you to do my presentation. Council, Mayor, thanks for giving us the time, staff, to present to you today this request. I'm going to roll right into the presentation because a picture is worth 1,000 words. I'll talk a little bit about what we do, but just set your eyes. I know a lot of you have been to the Help Center, but just as a refresher, it's a circa 1960s building, so it's got a little age on it. I think it's been taken care of well by its current tenant, resident, and our predecessors, which happen to be the library and then a timber company. Anyhow, look at the width of that vanity. It's got a lot of elbow room, but this was not built when ADA had a lot of things in compliance. That there is ceiling tile, noise absorbing, but it contains asbestos. And that's the one thing that surprised us in this whole vetting of this process was we're surrounded by asbestos. But if you don't disturb it, it's fine. But in order to redo the down to studs remodel that we need to do, you've got to bring in a licensed contractor that knows how to dispose of this, and that brings a big price tag. It otherwise works fine, but it needs to be removed. This here is a mosaic tile of the floor in the men's restroom. I used my iPhone 13 to shoot these photos, and one of my staffers that's put this together said, "Larry, that looks too good." And I said, "Well, blame the iPhone. Maybe you can smudge it up a little bit to make it not look so good." But if this were in a residence to have that mosaic tile, it's fine. But you can just see all the grout lines, and that's just a magnet for germs. It's just a magnet for germs, so that's got to go. That's me. I was going to dump this photo, but staff thought it was pretty good. I'm a tall guy. I don't have a whole lot of girth, but look at that. That is a stall in the ladies' restroom. I mean, you can't even get in there. That's a toilet paper dispenser right under my left hand. But if you have any little bit of girth, you're just not going to use that bathroom. I'll talk about some numbers in a second, but you almost have to take a number to use the restroom. This conference room is not Tesh's conference room, although they have a lot of similarities. This here is the monthly Idaho Homeless Coalition meeting. We have about 30 or 40 organizations. We have our very own Captain Dave Hager on the left, kind of hiding up against the wall. And there's the back of a Dead Center a fellow you might know, John Bruning, who's here with me tonight that might help answer questions. My point is showing this group meets once a month. It could be 45 people. We had Panhandle Health getting a little heartburn because of congregate settings during COVID, but we happened to manage it. But as Chelsea said, it's a multi-purpose building. This is a meeting that we had, different purpose. There are about a dozen people attending this meeting, a few people off camera, but different organizations, community, for-profit, nonprofit throughout Kootenai County. This is cool. We turned that same conference room into a Christmas store for needy families within the community. The donations are coming from people that you know that would remain anonymous, that do quite a bit to make it special for families. This turns into a Christmas fantasy land about 3 weeks of the year. We're going to be coming up on that in a bit. I did not know this. My fault, or only handicap, is being colorblind. But as Marcy said, and somebody on your staff even told me, that the lighting here, the way it's emitting and it's cycling, is actually pretty strenuous on the eyes. But it's circa 60s, and that's just what was available then. These people I put into the photo, I don't know why their backs are turned to the camera person, but what it does is just demonstrate scale. I'm sure there are probably a couple dozen people that are not even on this photo, but that was taken around the holidays of last year. You can tell by their attire. We have organizations that come to the help center. It's just a great location, centrally located, and we just have a lot of people there. That's a lot of toilets flushing and a lot of pushing and pulling on an old building, right? We have the youth. We have to. This happens to be a couple weeks ago, some students working on a project at Lake City High School that came in. We have to develop our youth because they're going to replace us someday. And so whether they're young or old, we have a lot of users. Like I said, profit, nonprofit, but a lot of educational institutions that are coming to us. I hesitated whether I was going to tell this in front of Chief White, but this Saturday let's say it's Sunday. We have the Idaho North Idaho Jeeps Club coming to the help center. They've done this now 3 years in a row, and they bring about 75 Jeeps, and these are pretty tricked out Jeeps. And the reason I didn't want Lee White to know about this is these Jeepsters like to climb curbs. But I also assure Troy they're not damaging any curbs and sidewalks. But they form a Christmas tree with their Jeeps, and they bring over 600 pounds of turkeys and stuffing and dressing and things like that. Throughout the year, we have 230 meetings that come at the help center. You saw the size of it. A lot of you have been there. It's just a great venue, a great centralized location for people to use. Our barriers are very low. You just have to have a purpose and you can use it. Our parking lot's great. The location's great. It's used 7 days a week. We have monthly meetings. We have bi-monthly meetings. We have annual meetings. The Chamber of Commerce brings their leadership class through and use it. We do a little dog and pony show to tell everybody what we do. So I think it's without question that the Help Center, which ended up originating as a gift from the city, is showing its age, but we have some careful users of it. But in the process, we just need to rehab the bathrooms, and we need to replace ceiling tile that needs to go and improve some of the lighting. So we're before the council asking for help. I never thought in the world that this would cost as much as it does. We have Boughton Construction, who does big jobs at the hospital. That frankly, we're just a gnat's eyelash. But Boughton knew what we do, what St. Vinny's does for the community, and they're going out of their way to sharpen the pencil, to produce a number, to get us new bathrooms. We need the funding. The council came through. Thank you last year for what we thought could get a lot done, and then as all projects do, they tend to snowball. Winter, pun intended. And the cost is quite extensive. The types of clients, as you're aware, are the Alice population, the working poor that we serve. We offer a couple dozen social service programs. We deal with what we hope are mostly situational homeless, but we also have a lot of chronically homeless that come through. We help women of domestic violence in our own program, but we also partner with others. We help veterans. As you know, the kitchen has showers, laundry. We feed over 100 people an evening. In fact, we're now eating inside, which is nice. That's the first time in 2 years. So we couldn't do what we do without community support. But one of the biggest supporters, and you helped us a couple years ago, was upgrading our HVAC. So we're nice and toasty and warm in the winter, and we're cool in the summer. So we do a lot. And I want to thank the council for considering this request.
Thank you.
I have a question for him, if I could.
I know.
So that used to be a construction lumber company, and then the city had it as a library for a long time until we built this one, right? And I thought, so you've been in there that long, and it's still 1960s downstairs, right?
Well, it's 60s everywhere.
I love it.
Yeah. I mean, new flooring, but the basic structure and, the plumbing, the electrical. In fact, we found out that we didn't have a backflow valve. I mean, backflow valves have been around for a long time. Even, the organization that sold it to us wasn't aware, but a robust city council inspector said, you don't have a city inspector said, you don't have a backflow valve. But, yeah, Councilman, it's 60 years old, but we love it. I can't tell you how many people that come in and go downstairs. Oh, this used to be the children's part. I know this place really well.
Oh, I think it's nice that we were able to get rid of it to you guys, so to speak. I didn't mean it that way. But that was a big deal when we were trying to sell it and what were we going to do with it. And you guys were right around the corner. So it really worked out well and not bad for that many years. And you're slowly bringing it around, but it stays busy. You guys do a lot of things. It blows my mind.
Yeah, homelessness is complicated. It's been decades in the making. It takes too much time for us to discuss today. But it's the Help Center, HELP, Helping Empower Local People. And this council, some of your predecessors and some of you had the vision to just say, we're going to be in front of this thing. We know what happens in cities all across our country, from the Pacific to the Atlantic, where you don't have the vision, you don't have the partnership, you don't have the leadership to stay in front of these things. And that Help Center is our headquarters. It's the hub of activity, but without it, a lot of bad things would happen.
I'm with you. Thank you for my.
But thanks for acknowledging that.
Thanks, Larry.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Actually, I'm really glad to hear you finally got that HVAC resolved. That was still an issue when Sandy and I were temporarily running the organization. So that's great to hear.
It would moan and groan and.
Yes.
But Mayor, I know you think a lot of our organization. Your lovely wife being a garage seller, I know she visits our thrift store. Councilman Gookin, you recognize that there are some people that are just not able to help themselves, but civilized societies do that. And dang it, Coeur d'Alene's a pretty nice place to live, and I think it's got the right balance and leadership. It really does.
That'll be a great place to have soup on Thursday from 11:30 to 1:30.
Councilman Miller, thank you.
Which
This
is a
on
fundraiser
YouTube,
for
isn't it?
St.
We
Vincent
could
de Paul.
we could do a little PSA. Yeah, support. I'll tell you. I realize I've taken up too much time, but it's simple math. We freeze after 32, or really before that. We open at 28. It's been under 28 like the last week, and it's going to be for the next week. We're going to have to float about $70,000 in payroll this year to cover that winter warming shelter. And Councilman Miller, we have that support. So come out to the mall on Thursday between 11 and 1 and get bloated on some soup.
Thank you.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Larry.
Thank you.
Council, you have a motion before you.
No, we don't, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Not yet. One more. One more, just the decision point. So our recommendation is council should authorize staff to enter into contract negotiations for the 2022 CDBG Community Opportunity Grants with St. Vincent de Paul for the restroom and conference room rehabilitation for $128,423, and TESH for the replacement of fluorescent lighting, adding dimmers and motion sensors, and adding lighting for safety in their parking lot for $63,944.
Dan?
Just a quick further discussion, and then we'll, I'm sure, make the motion, but specifically for the TESH, for the parking lot improvement. In my recent past as a retirement gig, I drove for a medical transport company and took a lot of people there, some kids after dark, and like the first time I'm coming there after about 5:30, and I can't see where in the world
You're going.
they'd be coming out of and all of that. And so that's, that's a critical upgrade, and have been in the Help Center many times. So, I'm really happy to see that we have the opportunity for these kind of quality projects.
Sounds like you're going to make a motion.
And so with that, if we're ready for a motion, I would make, or did I say no?
I have one question.
One more? Okay.
Quick question. If one of the projects does not rise to the amount granted, let's say, for instance, St. Vinny's project comes in less than anticipated of the 128, would those funds be available for TESH since we're not funding the full amount requested?
Yeah, they could be available for that. I guess it would depend on the timing and which project gets going quicker and finishes. But yes, potentially, or they could go back into to fund another project.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Dan.
So with that, I would make a motion to approve Resolution 22056, approving CDBG agreements using 2022 Community Opportunity Grant Funds with TESH in the amount of $63,944 and St. Vincent de Paul of North Idaho in the amount of $128,423.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, will the clerk take the roll, please?
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin.
Yep.
English.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion, there being no further business, that this meeting be adjourned.
Second.
All those in favor of the motion respond with aye.
Aye.
Opposed with nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned.